Hello there and a very good evening and welcome. This is Primetime News on TV1. Today is the 3rd of July 2023. For the News First team, I am Jama Ratnayaka.
And I'm Theruni Karuna Ratna.
We apologize that Newsline was not aired on its usual time slot today due to circumstances beyond our control owing to the ICC World Cup qualifiers matches going on. However, you can watch Newsline right after our primetime bulletin once it ends at 9:30. Let's now take a look at your headlines for tonight.
Join the efforts to rebuild the nation regardless of party politics. An invitation from the President to the opposition. The burden of the domestic debt restructuring process was not distributed equally. A statement by the former central bank governor. MP Jagat Kumara prepares to bring those who disrupted the Aswasuma program to court. Buddhists across the island engage in religious observances for the Adi Asala full moon Poya day. Many devotees visit the Yudaganava Rajamaha Vihara for the Sirasa Namami program.
In your top story for this evening, Parliamentarian Jagat Kumara of the Sri Lanka Podu Jana Peramuna says that legal action will be taken against all the parties who ignore the people who should benefit from the Aswasuma social welfare program.
A meeting between the Samurdhi beneficiaries of the Sitavaka Divisional Secretariat who were not included in the Aswasuma social welfare program and Parliamentarian Jagat Kumara was held at the Sitavaka Pradeshya Sabha auditorium this morning. Appeals were also made on behalf of the Samurdhi beneficiaries who were not included for the Aswasuma social welfare program. MP Jagat Kumar expressed his views to the media after the meeting.
This is not a survey carried out by Samurdhi officials. This is not a survey done by Gram Niladhari officers. So this system is wrong. It wasn't even these junior officers who did it. This was completely led by the chairman of the welfare board. The retired government officials created jobs for their income. In the end, they worked to the point where the people of the country could not live. We hope to bring all the officials who have been responsible for this from the chairman to courts.
Speaking to media, the Samurdhi Development Officers Association pointed out that due to the delay of the Aswasuma program, payments that were due last month will also be put on hold.
The government continuously stresses that they will provide these welfare benefits to the people starting from the 1st of July. There was a delay in Samurdhi banks in paying the welfare benefits in May and June. It has not been possible to implement the Aswasuma social welfare benefit scheme. The subject minister has stated that the name lists for the beneficiaries who will be provided with cancer aids and kidney aids will be published soon. We suspect that the agenda behind delaying Aswasuma is to delay the payment of Samurdhi benefits, allowances for the elderly, the disabled and the cancer patients for the month of July who were already being benefited.
ජූලි මාසෙට අදාළ මේ අස්වැසුමට පෙන්නලා ගෙවීම ප්‍රමාද කිරීමේ යටි ඌමනාව තියෙන කියලා අපිට බරපතල සැකයක් තියෙනවා.
Leader of the opposition Sajith Premadasa highlighted the importance of protecting the Ayurveda and other traditional medicinal practices.
The opposition leader met with a group of traditional medical practitioners at the office of the opposition leader in Colombo.
We can see the government displaying its incompetence and foolishness by attempting to influence traditional medicinal practices and its subculture. The government is trying to urgently bring the Ayurveda Amendment Bill and destroy the traditional medicinal practices of Sri Lanka. Within the next month, we plan on presenting a list of legal suggestions to protect and conserve traditional Sri Lankan Ayurveda medical practices and practitioners.
ඉදිරි මාසය ඇතුළත ආයුර්වේද වෛද්‍ය ශාස්ත්‍රයත් පාරම්පරික වෛද්‍ය ශාස්ත්‍රයත් සුරක්ෂා කිරීම එයට අවශ්‍ය නීතිමය ශක්තිය ලබා දීම මේ කරුණු කාරණා මත අපේ යෝජනාවලියත් ඉදිරිපත් කරන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා.
Samagi Jana Balawege MP Rohana Bandara also expressed views during a media briefing on Monday.
Ranil Wickramasinghe used to talk about the democracy of the country and the democracy within parliament while he was in the opposition. After he was appointed as the president, he has forgotten parliamentary democracy. It is clear that he says one thing and does something else. He initially told that domestic debt restructuring will not take place. Then he introduced that. He told that EPF and ETF will not be affected. Now that has also been done. The person who said that the parliamentary system should be strengthened suddenly summoned the parliament and took it under his control through a bill. He didn't leave the autocracy until the United National Party was destroyed. Now he is doing the same with the Republic as well, sitting on the throne of the Republic of Sri Lanka itself.
Then Sri Lanka ජනරජයට කරන්න හදනවා. දැන් මේ ජනරජයේ පුටුවේ වාඩිලා ඉඳගෙන
News first with the people.
The Adi Asala Full Moon Poya Day is celebrated today.
Incidentally, and Adi Asala Full Moon Poya Day falls once in every 4 years, and Asala Full Moon Poya Day is due on the 1st of August.
Buddhist devotees across the island were seen engaged in Amisa and Pratipatti Puja at temples. Today has been named as the Adi Asala Poya, apart from the Asala Poya falling on the 1st of August. Additionally, the Nikini Full Moon Poya Day is also due in the month of August. It is mentioned in Buddhist history that the Bodhisattva as a prince was conceived by Queen Mahamaya on an Asala full moon day. The Buddha's preaching of his first sermon, Dhammacakkappavattana Sutra, to the 5 ascetics took place at the Deer Park near Baranas on an Asala Poya Day, thereby inaugurating his public ministry.
The Sirasa Namami program for the Adi Asala Poya commenced this morning, centering the historic Yudaganawa Rajamaha Viharya in the Monaragala district. Devotees from across the island were present at the start of the religious ceremony, which commenced following religious observances and the offering of alms, also known as the Kiri Ahara Puja. The Sirasa Namami program was presided over by the chief incumbent of the historic Yudaganawa Rajamaha Viharya and chief Sanganayaka of Uwavellassa, Venerable Galtan Watte Nanda Ratanathera. Today's Dhamma sermon was delivered by Venerable Dr. Mawarale Baddiya Thera.
අපි ධර්මයට විනයට කීකරු වෙන්න ඕන. මොකද අපිට නිවන් දකින්න නම් ඒ වැඩ පිළිවෙල අවශ්‍යමයි. අපි යහපත් මිනිස්සු සත්පුරුෂයෝ වෙන්න නම් ඒ වැඩ පිළිවෙල අපි යන්නම අවශ්‍යයි. ඒ නිසා කීකරුකම වහල් වීම ගැතිවීම එකක් නෙමෙයි. සම්පූර්ණ දෙකක්.
The Vihara Asana program, which discussed the rich and long-standing history of the Yudaganawa Rajamaha Viharya, was held as part of the Sirasa Namami program. Intellectuals, including university lecturers and officers from the Department of Archaeology, attended the erudite discussion. The Sat Piyuma program focused on the Buddhist and cultural revival of Uwavellassa throughout the years. The Bodu Daruo Dhamma discussion was also held with the participation of school students from the area. In addition, a puja to offer 108 varieties of medicine was organized by the Buttala Divisional Secretariat.
Devanarana,
ពី you ណារណា go
officials congratulated the Saudi leadership for the success of this year's Hajj as pilgrims from the island nation began wrapping up their stay in the kingdom.
This year, about 3,500 Sri Lankans performed the pilgrimage that is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. The Hajj season drew to a close after nearly 1.9 million Muslims from around the world performed its rites. Sri Lanka's ambassador to Saudi Arabia, Pakir Mohideen Hamza, told Arab News that the island nation wishes to congratulate the leadership of the kingdom for the successful conclusion of the biggest Hajj operation ever. Hamza said as he extended his sincere appreciation that when 100 Sri Lankan pilgrims faced issues with their accommodation, the problems were resolved, with Saudi authorities providing them alternatives. He said the Saudi government has utilized its fullest potential to succeed in the Hajj affairs.
President Ranil Wickremesinghe invited the opposition to join the government in its effort to solve the issues of the people instead of interfering by highlighting false arguments.
The President expressed these views at the Amaraviru Abhiman 32 ceremony held at the Magam Ruhunupura International Convention Centre. The ceremony was held to honour Minister of Agriculture Mahinda Amaravira for his 32-year political career.
We initiated this proposition through the State Financial Committee, which summoned the necessary officials and conducted relevant inquiries. Eventually, they agreed to the suggestion. However, when the proposal reached Parliament, it did not receive the necessary backing, as 62 MPs voted against it. The opposition raised 3 main arguments. First, they claimed that the Employees' Provident Fund should not be touched. However, we did not touch it, and we legally safeguarded it by establishing a minimum interest rate of 9%. Second, the opposition argued that banks with their interest rates at 24% should not be exempted from taxes. We explained that the interest rates would decrease further in the future, and the governor of the central bank projected inflation to be brought down to 9%, which would result in interest rates going down to between 12 and 13%. If the opposition insisted on imposing taxes, we were open to considering the amount required. The third objection focused on not increasing income tax for banks, as they claimed it would lead to increased interest rates. We clarified that if taxes were increased, banks would charge customers higher interest rates to compensate. Therefore, we requested the opposition to provide a feasible solution for this issue. However, these 3 arguments were ultimately rejected by the speakers.
අපි උදව් කරා කියලා. අපි ඉල්ලන්නේ දැන් මෙතෙන්ට එන්න. අපි ඔක්කොම එකතු වෙමු. මෙහෙම මේ බොරු තර්ක කියලා හරියන්නේ නැහැ. අසාර්ථක වෙලා තියෙනවා. ඒකට කතානායකතුමා කතා කරලා තවත් වගකීම් අපිට පුළුවන් එයාට පාර්ලිමේන්තුවට දෙන්න. කරුණා කළා ආණ්ඩුවට සහයෝගය දෙන්න. විපක්ෂ නායක කමට කිසිම තර්ජනයක් වෙන්න අපි ඉඩ දෙන්නේ නැහැ කියලා අපි කියන්න කැමතියි.
Foreign Minister Ali Sabri, speaking to reporters on Monday, disputed assumptions made during the parliamentary debate on the debt optimization program.
Multilaterals like the IMF, World Bank and ADB, you can restructure that. You have to continue to pay because they have given you at very low interest rate. Secondly, bilaterals, the countries, China, India, Japan, Paris Club. We are talking to them of a restructuring. Thirdly, the bond holders, ISB holders, Sri Lanka development bond holders, they're private creditors. So that we are looking at restructuring. Then comes local creditors. Who are the local creditors? Central bank, the bonds, treasury bills which have been issued, treasury bills which have been subscribed by our banks, treasury bills which have been subscribed by the EPF, and treasury bills of the bondholders. Debt sustainability, the foreigners have agreed to give us per year a 2.6% of a GDP reduction. They asked Sri Lanka also to contribute. Sri Lanka's contribution is 1.6% of the GDP. Out of that 1.6% of GDP, government as through the central bank had taken 1.1%. The government which is taking the response, central bank. The balance 0.5% we had to find from somewhere. What were those somewheres? 3 specific groups. Who were that 3 specific groups? One is EPF, ETF and the pension funds. Second one is bondholders. Third one is banks. Opposition leaders were 9% of the bonds are held by the private bondholders. That's not correct. 0.9. So that they are paying last year 15% of was the corporate tax. That has been increased to 30%. But EPF, 14% of taxes they are paying that are not being increased. So in view of that, with all these things, we must accept the fact that debt restructuring is not going to be popular. In the parliament also, there was some of the argument was that the EPF is now taking 13.5% of it, and up to 2038, if you calculate that and look at 9%, this much of a loss is there. It's totally wrong on bad assumption. The assumption is this 13.5% should be there till 2038. That is on the basis that last year's treasury bill rate of 30%, which has already come down to 16%, which will come down to even lower. Last year, the inflation was 66% for a year. It went up to 80, but average of the year for 66%. That will come down to single figure to be there forever. Actual return, what they have got is not 13.5%, 10.6%, that including the administrative cost. So therefore, that calculation is totally based on wrong assumption. On the basis of a totally different scenario of last year's return, which is not going to be there even for the next year. So in fact, if the prices and the percentages come down, the return could be very low on the next cycle of these bonds and the treasury. If that is the case, a guarantee of 9.1% probably may serve as a base of protection for the EPF holders.
Several parties expressed their views on the domestic debt optimization program earlier today.
Former Central Bank Governor Ajit Nimad Kabral says that there are many shortcomings in the approved process for domestic debt optimization.
When we look at this, there are many shortcomings. The burden isn't distributed equally. If the CBSL owns a treasury bill, it's treated one way. If a bill is with a primary dealer, it is dealt in another way. And if it's with a foreign investor, it's treated in a whole different manner. When that takes place, the entire system becomes a joke. I don't think anyone believes that these proposals can be implemented in this manner. Sometimes people will be tempted to file a lawsuit against this, and even then there may be obstacles to that journey. They first told that the EPF will not be affected, and later they told that a return of 9% will be provided. No one will believe that at a time in which the interest rates for treasury bills and bonds are up at 35%, the Employees Provident Fund is earning at 9%. If banks are given some relief, don't you need to be a little bit considerate of the people? It has passed the authority to the finance minister to take decisions on his discretion. In the future, things may be done without any discussion.
SJB MP Dr. Harsha De Silva expressed views regarding the domestic debt optimization process.
ලංකාව රාජපක්ෂලා සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම බංකොලොත් කරා මිනිස්සුන්ට ඒ කතාව පොඩ්ඩක් අමතක වෙලා වාගේ.
The Rajapakshas brought Sri Lanka to bankruptcy. It seems the public has forgotten that. It is because of them the inflation has been increased to 70%. 60% of people's assets have been reduced. People have lost their jobs. They created a mess by dragging the people onto the roads. They have set a world record after creating a mess by doubling the poverty rate in the country. Now some are trying to cover up their acts. It has come to a state where domestic debt needs to be restructured. When it comes to that, there needs to be equality. The Provident Fund is the monthly saving of the working masses of the country. Justice can be preserved if the burden is distributed equally. Not just the working masses. The burden must be equally distributed among the ultra-rich and owners of banks. As the opposition, we raised our objection towards unloading the full burden on the ETF. Therefore, on Tuesday, the share prices of banks will rise sharply. Moreover, certain bondholders with interest rates of 25 to 30% will earn a massive profit. A decision will have to be reached regarding the ETF, involving the stance of the 2.5 million working people. Some factions will benefit largely due to this, and the general public will face a negative impact. That is what will happen.
Hari, ඊළඟට මේ දින 21 තුල අර්ථ සාධකයට තීරණයක් ගන්න වේවි. මොකද්ද ලක්ෂ 25ක් වැඩ කරන ජනතාව වෙනුවෙන් ඔවුන් මේ වැඩපිළිවෙලට එකඟ වෙනවද නැද්ද කියන එක. සමහර කට්ටියකට මේකෙන් ලොකු වාසියක් ලැබෙවි. නමුත් බහුතරයක් මහ ජනතාවට මේකෙන් යම්කිසි අසාධාරණයක් වේවි. ඒක තමයි වෙන්නේ.
The National Executive Committee member of the Jatika Janabalawegya, Sunil Handunnetti, says the government has no intention of providing real solutions to the crisis.
MPs of the government raised their hands to pass this proposal. They have done so after signing a blank paper given by the President, that is to obtain the money mentioned in the agreement with Ranil Wickremesinghe later on. What is the proposal about? It will allow Finance Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe to make any decision regarding domestic debt restructuring, power cuts, prices of goods increasing. Interest is not the crisis itself, but how we feel the crisis. Day by day, this government is covering up the crisis. They are not finding solutions to it. They do not care about the welfare of the people. They only care about their priorities and unloading the burden on the people. But a selected group among the people are benefited. If you see the tax cuts, you can observe it clearly.
ජනතාවගෙනුත් මතක තියාගන්න තෝරාගත්ත පිරිසක. අන්න මේ ණය දැන් කපා හැරීම කරලා තියෙන්නේ කාටද කියලා බැලුවොත් ඒක හොඳටම තේරෙනවා.
While a public discourse has arisen regarding the domestic debt optimization program, the attention of farming communities is currently focused on the prices of paddy.
More than 148 acres of paddy fields have been cultivated in the Min area Baddapanwala farming movement, which is home to almost 70 families. The farmers of the area who are currently reaping the harvest for this season point out that they are forced to sell their harvest at very low prices.
අපිට රුපියල් 70යි මේ මිලට හම්බෙන්නේ 120ක්වත් දෙන්න ඕනේ. මෙවුව කරන්න අපි අලින්ගෙන් බැට ගන්න ඕනේ. රුපියල් 18000ක් යනවා අක්කරයක් කපලා ආපහු ගොඩට ගන්න. මේ වගේ මිලකට වී දෙනවා කියන්නේ ඇත්තටම පාඩුයි.
Meanwhile, the farmers of the Gonahaddanava and Vattebava areas in Kabitigol who carried out cultivations for the Yalla season also face the same plight. They have decided to reap the harvest by hand instead of using modern machinery due to financial difficulties they are facing.
Tractor drivers charge about 18,000 to 20,000 rupees to pluck a small area of the cultivation. That is why we have to reap the harvest by hand. Even after doing so, we have to sell the paddy at a price as low as 70 rupees. Paddy is being bought at 70 rupees in Kabitigol level. Officials are keeping quiet. A situation where we cultivate only for our own advantage has arisen by now.
Meanwhile, the Anuradhapura District United Farmers Organisation held a press briefing today.
In the least, if we ask them to sell the harvest of the Yalla season for 100 rupees, they ignore it. Nothing is left for the farmer. What is the work they have to do? The work they have is debt restructuring and formulating acts for terrorism and media broadcasting. Now there is a thing called an opposition. The opposition has a role. They have to oppose these acts before they are introduced. Before we consider the legislation, what we have to say is that you all are friends. They are all the same. This country has two parties. One is the political parties and the other is the people, the citizens. So what these politicians are doing is destroying these innocent people.
Six deaths were reported as a result of drowning over the past 24 hours. These incidents were reported from Norochole, Tiharia, Mena and Shillao.
A 42-year-old father of 4 has died after drowning in the Dadaroya. The incident took place on Sunday evening while he was swimming in the Dadaroya with his relatives. News First correspondents reported that the body was found 2 hours later. Another 2 people have drowned in Alankudava, Norochole. Sri Lanka police said they had drowned while they were on a swim with their relatives. The victims, aged 21 and 66, were residents of Madurankulia. 2 fishermen had drowned while fishing in Kattikare, Mana. The victims, aged 55 and 32, were residents of Mana. A young woman had drowned while she was on a swim in the Attanagalu Oya in Tiharia on Sunday afternoon. The 21-year-old victim was a resident of Colombo.
තාත්තා ගෙදර නෑ යන්න එපා කියලා කියන්න යකුවා නෑ ආච්චි මං කොයිවත් යන්නේ නෑ නේ ආච්චි ආසයෙන් ආයාලුවත් එක්ක මම ගිහිල්ලා එන්නම් කියලා ගියා 1:10ට විතර ගිහලා මෙයා
එයා යනකොට මට පීනන්න බෑ මාව බේරගන්න කියලා කිව්වා ඊට පස්සේ මමත් මෙයාත් කෑ ගැව්වා කවුරුහරි එන්න කියලා කවුරුත් ආවේ නෑ ඊට පස්සේ එයා යනකොට එයා මාව බේරගන්න කියලා අත පෙන්නුවා ඒත් කවුරුත් ආවේ නෑ එයා ගිහින් පොඩ්ඩක් වෙලා ඉන්නකොට තමයි අපේ කට්ටියත් ආවා ඊට පස්සේ තමයි වටේ ඉන්න කට්ටියත් ආවා.
Bodies of water, no matter how attractive and calm they may be, always carry a risk. Therefore, this is a kind reminder to always be vigilant of sudden changes in current and depth of such locations when planning to enter a body of water. Now, taking a look at our weather news, the Met Department says that heavy rains will continue to prevail in the southwestern parts of the island.
The Met Department said that the western and Sabaragamu provinces, as well as some places in the Kandy, Nuwara, Galle and Matara districts, will experience heavy rains of more than 150 millimeters. Meanwhile, landslide warnings have been issued for the Ratnapura, Kandy and Nuwara districts. The National Building Research Organization said that landslide warnings have been issued to the Ambagamu Divisional Secretariat of the Nuwara district and the Paspage and Korale Divisional Secretariats in the Kandy district. Landslide warnings have been issued to the Nivitikala Divisional Secretariat in the Ratnapura district.
Litrogas says the price of a domestic gas cylinder will be brought to a price limit between 2,500 and 3,000 rupees.
Its chairman Mudita Piris says that an official notice in this regard will be released tomorrow. Currently, the price of a 12.5 kilogram domestic gas cylinder is 3,186 rupees. Muthuraja or Saksurin, gifted to Sri Lanka 2 decades ago, arrived back in its birth country on Sunday following a diplomatic spat over the animal's alleged mistreatment.
The 4,000 kilogram mammal arrived in Thailand on Sunday, having been transported inside a specially constructed giant steel crate on board an Ilyushin Il-76 cargo plane. The elephant will undergo hydrotherapy in Thailand to treat an injury on its left front leg. The Thai Environment Minister said Thailand has stopped sending elephants abroad, adding that Bangkok's diplomatic missions are checking the condition of elephants already sent overseas. Saksurin was transported to the Elephant Conservation Center for 30 days in quarantine. Once at the quarantine center, Saksurin will be moved out of the cage and given another physical checkup. A vet will also draw some blood for analysis. Then the animal will be left to rest. The Thai government has allocated 19.5 million baht from the central fund to finance this repatriation project.
Taking a look at a story that has grabbed headlines the world over, attackers in France tried to set fire to the home of a suburban Paris mayor's home overnight and fired rockets at the official's fleeing wife and children. President Emmanuel Macron asked his ministers to quote-unquote continue to do everything to restore order and guarantee a return to calm.
The incident has caused widespread shock and is being treated as attempted murder. The French Prime Minister described it as intolerable. Paris mayor was not at home, but his wife suffered a broken leg and a child was also hurt. The attack on the mayor's home came during the 5th night of violent protests across France over the death of Nahel, aged 17, who was shot by police at point-blank range during a traffic stop. Around 45,000 police officers were deployed in France on Saturday to control the protests, and the Interior Ministry said Saturday night had been quieter with fewer arrests overall. According to officials, there were more than 700 arrests across the country and more than 800 fires were lit by rioters during the course of the night. The Paris mayor has urged the French government earlier to impose a state emergency in response to the riots, which President Emmanuel Macron has so far declined to do. Earlier, President Emmanuel Macron attended a meeting with senior officials in Paris regarding the prevailing situation. He asked ministers to, quote, continue to do everything to restore order and guarantee a return to calm, unquote. Macron said he remained firmly alongside the security forces who were trying to restore calm to the streets, but at the same time was looking to detail at the events that led to the death of 17-year-old Nahel. The president is due to meet leaders of parliament on Monday and more than 220 mayors of towns and cities that have been affected by the riots on Tuesday. A former French president has been speaking about the riots, which he says are not an immigration problem. He said, quote, it is our social and republican model that needs to be deepened, unquote. The ex-leader said it was very important to restore authority and order, adding that no social cause justifies the use of violence.
U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen will travel to Beijing from the 6th to 9th of July for meetings with senior Chinese officials on a broad range of issues, including U.S. concerns about a new Chinese counter-espionage law. The law threatens to punish entities that act in ways detrimental to China's interests, but does not specify which lines should not be crossed.
The United States on Friday warned about a new Chinese counter-espionage law, saying American and other foreign companies in the country could face penalties from Chinese authorities for regular business activities. Chinese lawmakers this year passed a wide-ranging update to Beijing's anti-espionage legislation, banning the transfer of any information related to national security and broadening the definition of spying. State media called the law a key step to enrich the legal toolbox against Western hegemony. China this year has also cracked down on US consultancy and due diligence firms, a move business lobbies have said unnerved foreign investors in the world's second largest economy. Yellen's long-anticipated trip is a part of a push by President Joe Biden to deepen communications between the world's two largest economies, stabilize the relationship, and minimize the risks of mistakes when disagreements arise. It comes just weeks after Secretary of State Anthony Blinken visited Beijing and agreed with Chinese President Xi Jinping to stabilize ties and ensure the two countries' intense rivalry does not veer into conflict.
Sri Lanka cricket fans rejoice as the Sri Lankan women's cricket team made history today as they defeated the New Zealand women's cricket team in a series, recording a 2-1 victory over their opponents.
Chamara, you got the point?
The third match between New Zealand and Sri Lanka's women's cricket teams was held at the Galle International Cricket Stadium earlier today. Batting first, New Zealand scored 127 for the loss of 2 wickets when the match was temporarily halted due to rain. Sri Lanka was set a target of 196 in 26 overs based on the Duckworth-Lewis method after play resumed. The hosts managed to reach their target in 26.5 overs with 8 wickets to spare. Captain Chamariyadapattu played a magnificent innings, scoring 140 runs, recording her 8th ODI century in the process. Her winnings included 13 fours and 9 sixes. Nilakshi De Silva scored 48. This is the first time that the Sri Lanka women's team won a series by defeating the New Zealand women's team.
Win by 8 runs and belatedly. What a fantastic performance by the Sri Lankans, Gamini.
And with that, we conclude your primetime news here on TV1. For the News First team, I'm Theruni Karunaratna.
And I'm Jama Ratnayaka. This is just a gentle reminder to stay tuned to TV1 as Newsline will be broadcast right after the primetime news. Thank you for stopping by. Take care and good night.